Bitcoin, crypto, bubbles, passive indexation. There's a lot of financial jargon out there. Old Mutual can help you make sense of it all and give you great advice to make the right decisions. If you've got a question or want to know how to get the most out of your money, call them on 0860 60 60 60 or speak to an Old Mutual financial advisor or your broker. Today's the day. Get great financial advice so you can do great things. Old Mutual is a licensed financial services provider. He's wearing a red Saftu windbreaker. He's growing a whitish goatee beard. His name is Zwelinzima Vavi. He is the General Secretary, the founding General Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Unions. He was once the head of COSATU, born at Hanover in the Northern Cape. Dad was a mine worker, 4 brothers, 7 sisters. Child labourer, like so many South Africans, Zwelinzima Vavi, a really tough upbringing, working, going to get money for the family.
Good evening, Bruce, and good evening to everybody listening. Not a great day for me. One of those siblings have been rushed to hospital this afternoon, sister, and with a problem with her heart following a death of her husband about 3 years ago. She have never been the same after that. But it's great to be part of the show. Yes, I had an absolutely difficult upbringing, and life was absolutely tough in the farms where I was born. And it was during the darkest days of South Africa's, during the era of apartheid. It was immediately after the Sharpeville massacre. My name, Zwelinzima, is linked directly to that massacre. And the name was given to me by a neighbor, by the way, not even from my parents, which underlines the type of lives, communal life that our people lived during those days. A child of the village was a child for everyone. And so, yes, that's me and that's my family. But that's also millions of farm workers who grew up under those conditions. The regrettable part being that up to today, many of them will say that's not the past but the present.
Yeah, but, and that's got to give you a very particular perspective on land and the land debate and the attempt by the ANC to, I suppose, reply to the EFF's motion in Parliament for land restitution without compensation. You've got a very real first-hand experience of what it's like to be a tenant farmer on land to which you have no rights.
Absolutely. I know what it means to have the cattle of your parents sold to the very same farmer who claims that there's no more grazing land to accommodate everybody. I know the situation farm workers will tell you today of how they're losing their livestock to farmers who confiscate them after having opened the gates for them to wander in the main roads, only to find an excuse to get them pounded. And if you can go now to KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, you would not believe what the farm workers go through as we live 24 years into democracy. So when we speak about the land discussion, and you have to understand that it will have different meaning to farm workers in the farm, because they're looking for land to graze their farm, to bury their loved ones, and to have schools, to have university, to have playing grounds, to plow and to live. For workers in the urban areas who have been forced to migrate into the cities, it means more land next to where there's best opportunities for them to have opportunities to work. But it also means that they must have a piece of land to plow in their small gardens and to make sure that they can survive at a personal level. But to someone else who wants to live on a farm, who may be in someone elsewhere in South Africa, who wants to buy or to be given a piece of land in order to use it, it means something else. So the discussion sometimes obscures those different realities. We from the trade union movement, having in particular the advantage of having met 147 other civil society working class formations on the 21st, 22nd of July, came up with a clear position that says, yes, of course, we support the debate, the need for to settle the issue of land dispossessions, but we're talking more about land restoration as against the narrow definition of expropriation.
Yeah.
Even though we support the issue of expropriation, but we're asking a fundamental question: who's going to expropriate, advancing which class interest, and who is going to be beneficiaries, and from what class perspective? So we don't want a repeat of the mistakes that we have seen somewhere where there's a hullabaloo about expropriation, and then it end up in a BEE tycoon hands.
No, but exactly.
And with the workers in the farm still feeling the same effects of the 1913 Natives Land Act, and with no decisive action being given to give subsistence farmers and the communal farmers and or the cooperatives that are yearning out for support by the by government in terms of the plowing instruments, the seeds and all of that. So the discussion must be injected with a class content, with the fact that this is actually a very important class issue in South Africa today.
We need to talk about you and your money too, and your attitude towards money. And I get you in terms of you wanting to talk about the issue of land from a class perspective, which is critical in this particular debate. You worked in the mines for a bit. You worked in 1987. I think you were in Klerksdorp, Orkney, that part of the world. You worked at the Vaal Reefs mine. You joined NUM as an organizer at the time that Cyril Ramaphosa, of course, took the mining industry out on strike. You got fired from Anglo Gold in 1987. You then joined COSATU as a volunteer. You rose up through the ranks. You became the general secretary there. We are all familiar with the fallout. And now you formed this new South African Federation of Trade Unions. Does money matter to you individually? You've previously tweeted pictures of your nice house, your nice garden. You like to live comfortably. There's no sort of sense from you that you are condemning yourself or your family to living a tough life at all. But is money important to you?
Absolutely. Money is important to everybody that leads a life. Everybody is involved in a struggle to live better tomorrow. Nobody wants to consciously get trapped into what the majority of South Africans are trapped in today. 55% of our people live in poverty, and they are earning the upper bound of poverty level of 944 rands a person. Nobody wants that. Everybody is in a struggle, from the family to the society level, to climb the ladder out of the situation I was born into as a farm worker. But at the same time, we must not make a statement that I think it is now easy to make in South Africa. This statement that says we have now climbed on top of the roof, we are ready to kick the ladder, we are ready to display our wealth and to show our conspicuous consumption attitudes. We must rub the into the face of the poor the extent of how we have accumulated wealth. Look at what we wear. Look at our houses. Look at our last holidays. Look at the schools to which we're taking our kids. And look at the cars we drive. And look at the labels of the clothes that we wear. I hate that. And even though I can afford a house in Morningside where I live, but I don't want to rub that to the neighbors just 5 minutes away in Alexander, and to say to them, sorry, no solidarity between me and you. Yeah. You are up on your own, black brothers. I've won. The struggle was never meant to make me poor. I'm out of your world. I have always understood that even the middle strata must be conscientized, worst of all the rich people who can afford even more, that South Africa can never be truly free until we uplift that 55 million people, 55% of the population trapped in poverty, until we can conquer unemployment that is now breaking all of the previous records at 37.2%. And we can't be free. And that's why I have continued to involve myself in the struggles of ordinary people, even though I enjoy and live a middle strata life. And yes, that's where I am.
It's interesting. Why do you refer to it as a middle strata life and not a middle class life? And just for interest sake?
There's no class called the middle class.
Middle strata. I'm learning.
It's a middle strata. Yeah.
I'm learning. You like burbuls, which I find interesting. You've got big, scary burbuls.
And one of them gave birth last week.
Oh, so you got lots of
prematurely too many, perhaps 13, and now 6 died. I'm raising 5 physically myself. I can't have a full sleep at night. But that goes with the love of the animals. I don't know whether it is about the upbringing in the farms, but I find myself so attached to dogs, to birds, to cows. I've started to farm, but I've got 7 cattle now. I'm building up on that. It's more about the passion and the surroundings to me I wish could be that these animals, which I know will never betray you. And yeah, true. And unfortunately will never. But humans will do that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you've learnt a lot about human nature, particularly in the last decade or so, no doubt. I mean, money was short, no doubt. I mean, you came from a big family. I think you're one of the youngest, if not the youngest, in the family.
I'm number 10.
You're number 10.
Of 12 living.
Yeah.
We would have been 15 if 3 didn't die at an early age. So I know how to relate. And that's sort of infused to you certain things. For example, up today, I'm just struggling to eat alone. I eat better when there's a crowd next to me and when there's chatting all over. And I can hardly spend a holiday alone without the rest of the family. That becomes a nightmare, even if I have my wife and kids next to me. If those sisters and brothers are not around, if those neighbors and those extended family members are not around, that's not holiday to me, that's stress.
Peace and quiet, not for Zwelinzima Vavi. He's our guest this evening. Make Money Monday special edition, getting great insights into Zwelinzima Vavi's attitude towards money, tough upbringing, no spare cash around, working as a child labourer, as many kids have done, and I'm sure still do on farms, just to help the family make ends meet. When you then lost your job at Anglo Gold in 1987, and you then worked as a volunteer at COSATU, at what point did you then get into the management of COSATU and start earning a salary as a trade unionist?
Well, first I was elected into the chairpersonship of COSATU local in Klerksdorp way back in 1986. I would have been the second chairperson of that local following the departure of the first one to exile. Then after the dismissal, I worked as a volunteer and eventually got employed full-time by the National Union of Mine Workers. My first salary, I remember, as a volunteer in the NUM was a 300 rand signed by the absolute hero to me at that time, Cyril Ramaphosa, just retiring.
At that time?
And at that time, absolute hero, no question about it.
At that time?
At that time. Okay. And I can't say the same thing now. But in particular, when we're going to be watching the Marikana massacre video or documentary at SABC 1 tonight, no. Some people that were heroes yesterday are no longer heroes today. I must say this categorically. I don't like the role that he played. I think that he should have done more as a former organizer of those workers to facilitate an engagement with them instead of using his power to call on police to come and take stern concubine action as he did. And I think that is a blot in his career, in my eyes, forever.
Tell me about what a trade unionist does for retirement? Because many people, and we've had so many really increasingly interesting conversations with people. People like Professor Jonathan Jansen, who goes, no, I'm not worried about money. Max Dupree, who goes, well, I'm still, it took him years to pay off his debts defending himself in court against the apartheid state, and he's still regarded as a persona non grata in the United States. And then Kate Turkington going, well, you only need a little bit of money. You don't need lots of money. Are you somebody who does invest as somebody in the middle strata?
Absolutely. I do. And even though it's hard, man, even for the likes of us who earns 50 plus thousand rand a month gross, you struggle to save. I was just talking to one comrade today telling me that even in America, between 80 to 90 people, 90% of the population there lives from check to check. Basically means that they can't save. But you will have to force a culture of putting some money away for your retirement and money for your kids. The worst thing that I want to happen is for the people to say, this fellow's kids used to be, their father was the hero that everybody was speaking about in the struggles of the working class, but look at them now, can't go to school, living a pauper life and all of that. So yes, I'm doing the best that I can, that if something was to happen to me tonight, they are not found wanting, when I retire eventually, there's something that can save me from a pauper's life.
So what kind of companies do you invest in? How do you invest your money?
Well, I'm looking at, I'm sorry, do you allow to mention the names of the companies now?
If you'd like to.
Okay, of course.
There's no obligation. I'm interested, considering your background, where you come from.
I've put my retirement fund with the investment institutions, and I'm putting money aside for the retirement and the case of a death for my family, and with Discovery. So I think that they have a great scheme there, and which I've been won over. Very adaptable. It can be a retirement resource at when I reach 64, 65. But it can also be something that my kids can live on after I've died.
Here's many people would say, hold on a second, but here's this guy supporting white monopoly capital. What's going on?
I'm a socialist. I don't want to deny that. Everybody knows that. I don't apologize to anybody for believing that we must fight for a more equitable society. I hate inequalities. I hate living in a country with so much wealth and yet seeing so many people trapped in such unbelievable levels of pauper life. And my entire life have been dedicated into a struggle to end that system of capitalism. But I'm a realist. I know that you can never defeat capitalism in South Africa, and because capitalism is a global system, and capitalism itself is imperialism. Imperialism is globalization, and therefore you can't live in some utopian dream of saying we socialist, we don't want to invest, we don't want to relate with the reality that we live in a capitalist society today. We don't want to engage with it. We're just going to stand aside and be critic and not going to engage. And yet, as a trade unionist, every day our lives is about engaging the reality of negotiating for better deals, which is about negotiating to get something out of a social surplus value that belongs to workers, but that is now being privatized into private hands of investors, of the people who, in inverted commas, own the wealth and all of that. So, yes, we relate with this. This is our reality. 70-80% of all property in South Africa is in private hands. 70-80% of all people employed are employed by the private firms and not by the state. So we have to engage with the system of capitalism. From that point, we're realist. We hate the system. We struggle against it, but we know that we have to negotiate. with the other side for wages, including negotiating and making demands about job creation.
Yeah.
And even though we know that the system will never ever give us a 100% employment rate at any point, but we must keep on pushing. We must keep on pushing. That's a reality.
When you look at the way you spend money, do you have bad money habits? I mean, you've taken responsibility and good adult responsibility, look after your kids, looking after their futures, should you not be able to do it yourself directly. What about making bad money decisions? Small inyana skeletons, to use the phrase.
Well, at least I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I consider that money wasted, by the way. Okay. And I've been into smoking. I stopped way back in year 2000. Thanks to Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's campaigns.
She made it too difficult.
It was difficult, but I decided that that's it. And she was just all over. I mean, in every meeting, she couldn't spare us, the smokers. And I decided that she have a point, and I think that millions of South Africans will always own her. And that's why, no matter what are the momentary discussions we have about today, the ANC, but she will always have a very special heart. In my view, she drove a very good campaigns as a Minister of Health. I think she did take South Africa into a different direction, even though we're still trapped in a largely dysfunctional healthcare system. Yeah. But thanks to her, that so many people in this country gave up smoking,
but
and
do
that nobody
do you have
can.
Any bad money habits before I let you go?
Bad habits? I don't know. I give my money